Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us to today's technology webcast, Top 5 PCI DSS Myths. My name is Kim Francisco, and I'm the Marketing Communication Manager at ANX. Visit ANX.com on upcoming PCI-related webinars for more information. Before we begin today, let's cover a few logistical details. All lines will be in listen-only mode for the duration of the conference. Second, we want to hear from you, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webcast with Glenn. Please submit your questions at any time during the presentation using the Q&A box or the chat window on the right, and we will cover as many as possible. Last, we will be sending a link to the recorded webcast shortly after the event for your review. Now let's cover the fun holiday giveaways. As a gift for attending this webinar, we will be giving every attendee a $5 gift card, and we will be giving additional gift cards away during the webinar to the first person to answer various questions correctly. One of the attendees of this webinar will also receive a $50 Best Buy gift card at the end of the webinar in a random drawing, so please stay tuned for the Q&A. As a bonus, all attendees will be entered into a drawing to win a free iPad 2 at the end of the PCI Holiday Webinar Series. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Glenn Moore, Vice President of Marketing here at ANX. Glenn Moore joined ANX as the Director of Marketing in August of 2008. He is responsible for all marketing at ANX. Glenn has more than 20 years of experience in business-to-business marketing and technology and security. Prior to joining ANX, Glenn has served as Vice President of Commercial Marketing at LDMI, Talk America, and Marketing Director at Cavalier Telephone. Glenn holds a bachelor's in marketing and master's degree in telecommunications from Michigan State University. For our webinar today, Glenn will discuss common myths associated with PCI DSS. With that, let's dive into our first question. Who is this scientist? Along the side, you'll see some clues. He's a scientist and gravitational force.
He's a gravitational guy. So as those of you who've been on some of the other webinars I've done, I always start with kind of an obscure thing, but this isn't too obscure because my daughter was doing a report on him.
Very good. We have an answer already.
An answer?
Terry, great job. Sir Isaac Newton.
Excellent. Excellent.
All right, with that, let's dive into the presentation.
That
Glenn?
is a good way to start this, this webinar.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, I don't know about everyone on the call, but I'm in a holiday mood. Our company has our holiday party tonight, and this is the last of our three-part holiday series, so I'm going to move quickly through. A few of the slides are reviewing, because I think it's from other webinars that we've done, but I think it's really important that everyone has a common understanding of the data breach problem. But then we'll jump right into what are the top 5 PCI myths. And then, like other webinars, we keep the ANX information to a minimum, but we do want you to know what we do and how we can help on this problem. So let's start by looking at data breach by the numbers. And as most of you are aware, it's a very nasty problem, and it's literally costing billions of dollars every year. So really, every business that accepts a credit card is a target. But as you'll see, the franchises and the small level 4s are really becoming the target of choice for cyber criminals. So in particular, restaurant and retailers are the biggest victims, with an astounding 79% of the data breaches involving those types of locations. So here's a closer look at reported data breaches by industry. So you can see that the food service industry is by far the tops with 52% of the breaches. Retail is second at 27%, and you can see there's a lot of other industries in the small single digits. So it's brick and mortar retail and brick and mortar restaurants. So the distribution really hasn't always been that lopsided. It's accelerated in the last 5 years. So and the restaurant and retail share has climbed from 21 to 41% of the breaches. So really it's because it's so lucrative for the cyber criminals to pick on those locations. There's so many of them out there, and really they're just so ill-equipped to stop cyber criminals. So the success rate is very high, so that's where they're fishing. So drilling a little bit deeper into the problem indicates that level 4 merchants are being victimized the most. And again, it's because of the lack of complexity, but it's also of their security technology. But a lot of it's just lack of knowledge on easy, non-technical things that should be done to stop people from stealing credit card data. And we'll be getting into that in a little more detail in a few slides. So looking at it by system type, software point-of-sale systems are, again, leading the way with 67%. So that's where they're stealing it. And they're also targeting premise servers and point-of-sale devices. Shopping cart systems come in really a distant second at 25%, and other back-end components represent 7% of the compromises. So what does all this mean for the franchise structure? Well, obviously it's a huge risk with crippling consequences. So the cost of a single data breach can easily exceed $200,000. And if you break down those costs, for starters, when a breach occurs, someone has to figure out when it happened and how it happened. So you have to call a forensic expert, and that's going to cost $20,000 to sometimes $50,000 of cost just to figure out how bad the problem is and when it started. Then there's the cost that's passed down to the merchant of reissuing credit cards. So that can be $50 to $75 per card that's stolen. And then you add in fines, lost business, and really the higher operating costs associated with being breached. And it's not a pretty picture. And in fact, most people that are breached once, and that's because they go out of business if you're a small customer within 1 year. So you can see 76% of SMBs go out of business when they have a significant data breach. But those costs are really at the franchise level. So a data breach also really hurts the corporate brand. And this is, of course, a little harder to measure, but there's been recent studies that have quantified that a little bit better. So two notable stats on this slide: 12% loss of brand value, and that's huge. So those thinking, hey, I don't have to pay attention to my level 4s because that's their problem. Well, no, it comes back to the corporate brand and affects all members of that brand chain. And it also takes about a year of clean living, so to speak, before people forget about the breach that occurred. So it hits you quickly, and it doesn't go away quickly, and it's lost business, it's lost word of mouth advertising, and it's just something you really want to prevent. So I encourage everyone to check out this report link. And after the webinar, you'll be getting a link to the materials. But it's actually a very good report and a nice way if you're looking to help quantify your security spend in terms of why you need certain investment in security technology. Be sure to be talking about the impact to the brand. So that really brings us to the next topic, which are what are the PCI myths? And there's quite a few of them out there. We broke it down into the top 5. And some of them used to be true and aren't true anymore. Some are just never were true and have been perpetuated. So there's really 3 reasons for myths out there. First one is kind of I'll call it evolution. So the standards of how it's been enforced with acquiring banks. So early on, PCI DSS was a level 1 and level 2 merchant problem. So the banks really weren't that concerned with level 3s and 4 merchants. So even though it was out there, people were told to pay attention to it if you were smaller. There weren't penalties. The banks weren't calling the merchants saying, are you PCI compliant? They weren't sending emails, letters, charging more fees. That's all changed in the last 3 years. So with that explosion of breaches at the small merchant level, banks are paying attention. So that's the first kind of reason for these myths being out there. The second one is just lack of knowledge in the level 4 community. So even though banks are starting to talk about it more, there's just there's too much on a level 4's plate. They got to keep their doors open. They got to hire people. They've got to, get products. They got to generate sales, pay the rent, and there's not enough bandwidth left to understand how PCI DSS relates to their business. And then really the third reason for some of the myths out there are really, I hate to admit it, vendors. And we're a vendor out there like a lot, but especially hardware vendors for point-of-sale systems, they've been pretty vocal of saying, hey, if you buy my solution, if you buy my technology, you will be PCI compliant. And of course, PCI compliance goes well beyond that. So a lot of people out there making lots of bold claims about buy my stuff and you'll be PCI compliant, and a lot of falsehoods to that. So let's take a look at what some of the myths really are. So the first one really is that I can buy a single technology, so I write a check to someone and I'm going to be PCI compliant. And that just flat out isn't true. And the reason is, if you look at the PCI DSS requirement, the scope goes well beyond what any technology does. The scope touches on process. It talks on training. It talks on, or it speaks to all sorts of other things other than just being able to encrypt things in a security sense, having a firewall installed, having anti-malware software installed. You have to have things like written security policies. A technology's simply not going to do that for you. You have to change your passwords. You have to put physical locks on rooms, things like that. You have to keep access logs, and you have to inspect them. So there's a whole host of things that a single technology solution doesn't even address. And so you really have to take the time to look at claims from some of these so-called experts that say, buy my thing and you'll be PCI compliant. Challenge that through knowledge of the PCI regulation. The second myth is, PCI DSS is really an IT problem, primarily in the IT realm. Of course, that's not the case either. You have to do things like train all your employees on awareness of PCI risks and threats. Those aren't IT employees. Those are employees that are working the cash registers, that are basically interacting with customers in some capacity. You also have to train risk owners, so the owners of the business or the managers of the business. It goes well beyond just making sure you have the right technology and the right security policies in place. So it's a comprehensive how you do business in a secure manner, and IT is a big portion of it. But don't let anyone tell you, just let my IT guy worry about it. That's the number one way to get in trouble with not being fully compliant with the PCI statute. Third myth, compliance is confusing, or specifically PCI compliance is confusing. So is PCI compliance difficult? Yes. Is it time consuming? Definitely. Does it require a lot of resources or more than many companies have allocated? The answer is yes. But confusing, it isn't. Unlike some of the other statutes out there and regulations, I keep saying statutes, not a statute, but compliance regulations, PCI DSS is really well documented, and not just what you need to do, but how you need to be compliant and what you need to do to satisfy that requirement. So it's well documented, it's evolved, it's become clearer over the last year or so there's been updates. So the confusion factor may have existed a couple years ago, but that's not the case anymore. So you can't kind of plead, well, I'm not PCI compliant. It's confusing, so no one's really paying attention to it. They are paying attention to it. There are still some gray areas, especially with some emerging wireless technologies. but it's a very active review body, and the confusion is addressed quite well with the PCI statute. Not, I compared to a few other regulations like HIPAA, little more gray area there, and the enforcement is not as prevalent because you don't have banks issuing fines. You have the government kind of overlooking that. So, what may be confusing for HIPAA or a couple of these Graham Leach Bliley in the financial industry, you can't make that same claim on the PCI DSS. Next big myth that's out there is PCI doesn't apply to small business. And again, where that used to be true, that's that evolving category. That's just not the case anymore. So it is definitely something that small businesses needs to be aware of. And what you're seeing is small businesses getting letters. It isn't just me talking about. The banks are applying. They could do one of three things, really. Some of them are just sending a letter saying, go ahead, you need to be aware of this, get PCI compliant, and nothing more than that. And then you have some acquiring banks that are applying a non-compliance fee. So that ranges anywhere from $10 up to even $100 a month for any merchant that they're underwriting that's not shown to be PCI compliant. And then you have, the banks are taking the real hard line where they're basically threatening to stop and threaten and do stop processing credit card transactions. So very few banks these days are doing nothing when it comes to how they enforce PCI with small business. So kind of the days of it applies to the big guys and I don't have to worry about it yet. I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but those days are over. And if anything, over in the coming years, expect to see even more requirements pushed down on small business relative to PCI and kind of the burden of proof to ensure not just that you're compliant at one point in time, but you maintain a continual compliance. And the fifth myth is that PCI compliance guarantees security. So, of course, compliance is really just a static measurement of security at a given point in time, whereas security is an ongoing process of measurement, inspection, and improvement. So security is a process, compliance is a measurement at one point in time. So being PCI compliant, though, definitely does play an important role in security. So when you do complete all the PCI requirements, it means you're paying attention to security. The biggest pitfall when you do that is you don't want to cram to do your compliance. You want to adopt kind of a continual process where the things that you did to say yes on all your self-assessment questionnaire questions, you want to make sure that you're reviewing that throughout the year so that it's not just a single point in time that you're compliant. So some of the things where companies fall off the bandwagon, they do it to pass their SAQ but then stop doing it. Password changing, that's an easy one. People complain and you kind of roll over and allow that not to occur, or not to have complex passwords in place. Not watching the access logs, so you're not paying attention to who's accessing the data after hours, and should that person be doing that? Is that employee authorized to do that? So the best way is to kind of look at your access logs. Even giving remote access out to people that don't need it, and as their needs change, where they might have needed it for a project, not terminating that remote access after that project is over. Those are things that need to happen. Contractors as they come and go. So kind of remote access is a real weakness in administering. And as you'll get to when we talk about some of the ANX solutions, we have some good helpful ways to get your arms around that. Oh, we have a question?
Yeah. Doug asked, what is the small retailer saying that they don't keep credit card data, it's just passed through their credit card merchant service payments and they don't hold it? In their words, just pass through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And the people that don't retain or have a point of sale system definitely have less of a burden when it comes to PCI compliance, and the self-assessment questionnaire, or the type of questionnaire that type of business is much shorter, but there still are requirements. So anyone, for example, that touches a credit card has to know not to write those numbers down. It's a training thing. One of the most common mistakes people make is they'll write down a credit card and then then it gets thrown away in the garbage, and someone grabs it out of the garbage. So there's still requirements. There's a lot less of them. So that's very true. But to say, hey, I'm a simple little business and I don't have a computer point of sale system, you're getting yourself in trouble if you don't at least look at the self-assessment questionnaire that's designed for that type of business, which I believe is SAQB type B. So good question there. Let's see. So really, I think I covered the top 5 myths. We have another one?
Oh, no.
Okay. All righty. So let's one final slide here, and then I'll tell you a little bit about ANX, and we'll throw it open to some more questions. So to wrap it up, I just want to stress the importance of really getting started with PCI compliance. So if you're responsible for a level 4 franchise chain, getting everyone 100% compliant really is a daunting objective. And for the reasons, these are independent businesses, they have different understandings of where they're at, and it's not a priority for everyone at the same time. So what you really need to do is create a series of steps to get you to that bigger goal of having everyone be 100% compliant. So you really want to do things like, first goal would be select a platform to have everyone do their SAQs. So get a common platform so you can measure how many people are doing their SAQs. So that's not saying everyone do their SAQs and get them all completed, but pick a platform. The second thing you want to do is have everyone start their SAQ. So even though they're not going to, if they start it, it means they're paying attention to it. And that's a good goal, and it's something you can measure. So once you have your platform in place, then your goal is everyone log into the thing, everyone start your SAQ. You're going to get great benefits by hitting those two 100% objectives. Then kind of the third thing you should do is get everyone to roll out employee training. So there's really not a single thing you can do, I think, that will help you mitigate risk more than getting your employees trained. And that's not technical. That's just a matter of finding a vendor or finding a way in which to train your employees so that they're not doing things that are putting your business at risk. So I would get that as a 100% goal. Again, they haven't completed the whole SAQ, but now you've got them doing a bunch of things that are contributing to a safer environment. And then you really want to make sure everyone has an employee or vendor that's responsible for the technical portion. So not completed, but a lot of level 4s don't even know who is responsible within their environment. They bought a computer, it was put in, they don't know really who to talk to, they don't have an employee that maintains it, but you really want to have a conversation and identify the resource that you can rely on to do the rest of the SAQ. So as someone kind of saying grace over a level 4 program, make sure you're setting as a goal, does everyone in my chain have a person either on staff or a vendor that's going to help them complete the SAQ? So that's a lot easier to get everyone raising their hand saying, yes, I have someone, or no, I don't. And then you can provide a lot of value to the people that raise their hand and say, no, I don't even have someone. There's a lot of firms out there that can provide technical resources for that type of, and you can help point people to the right place to get help. So I think if you just do those types of things, even though you're not yet 100% compliant, you'll have made huge strides toward achieving that 100% goal, and you're going to make your system a lot safer along the way.
Okay, we have 2 questions that came in, and then we're also going to do a Starbucks giveaway.
All right.
So let's start with the 2 questions. We have, where do I go to get my self-assessment questionnaire?
Okay, that is a really good one. So a self-assessment questionnaire is, if you're familiar with the federal income tax, I like to use my tax example. It's a form. You can get it on the PCI DSS.org site, and it's a big old Word or PDF document, and it has, depending on which assessment, A, B, C, D, the longest one has over 250 questions. So it's kind of like the long set of federal income tax. You can get the raw forms, and you can try to do it yourself, and some people do that. There's also other people, such as ANX, that have a online portal that includes kind of a wizard approach to ask you how to, basically get the same information, you put it in a portal, and it fills out those forms for you. So I highly, highly recommend that Level 4s, whether it's us or someone else, gets a portal-type system, much like TurboTax has made the federal income tax easier for people to tackle. Get a portal system in place in order to do those FAQs.
Great. And then the next question is, if you use third-party vendors for POS equipment or software, credit card receipt storage, etc., do you need written documentation that they are PCI compliant?
You really should, and they'll all provide you with that documentation. And that is one. There's a series of questions about that in the FAQ, and so you will need evidence of that. And the good news is that one's a pretty easy one to get evidence on. The vendors have done a really nice job out there making sure that that's available to you. But good question. Be sure to ask for it, and ask and you shall receive.
Great. Okay, now we're going to do the Starbucks giveaway. So can anyone name 3 out of the 5 PCI DSS myths? And the first person to answer that correctly will get a $5 Starbucks gift card.
Can they go backwards here?
To review?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Open note test here.
Wait for it.
We got a couple people doing. There's one of them.
Yep.
There's 2 of them.
Getting close.
There's
all right.
2. Yeah. All
perfect. Well, very good. Someone was paying attention.
Yeah, good.
All right. Okay. Moving on back to the.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Just a couple more slides, and then we'll throw it open. So really, how can ANX help? Those of you who aren't familiar with us, we are a security and compliance company. So we kind of cut our teeth in the automotive industry. We built a secure network that connected all the suppliers to the automotive manufacturers. So we formed back in actually the network formed in 98, and we became a company in 2000. And basically the whole North American automotive industry was run over our network. So the design collaboration between suppliers and manufacturers. So the net of it is we've been in security a long time. And over the past 5 years or so, we've really branched out through acquisition of some smaller companies that were really deep in different security technologies into security and compliance space. So unlike some companies out there that don't have a deep security basis to their foundation of their company, we are a security company, and we've added some really cool compliance technologies and connectivity type solutions to our portfolio. So when we look at a customer and look to help someone, we can really go kind of soup to nuts when it comes to PCI compliance. So we can help with scoping. And we are, I forgot to mention, we're a certified QSA, and we are also an authorized scanning vendor. So we are certified by the PCI DSS in both those areas. But we really can go in with our personnel and help any organization through really the whole life cycle of PCI compliance. So from the scoping to the assessment, if there's remediation challenges, certification, and maintenance. So we have solutions that help with all of it or any one piece of it. And that's we don't try to just sell the same thing to everyone. We try to figure out where the hot spots are where the problem areas, and we can sit down and have a good conversation and drive value in any one of those 5 buckets. So one of the things that we do have that's especially relevant to a level 4 franchise chain is a solution we call True PCI. So it's our portal system to allow a franchise owner or chain to immediately know the status of all of the members in that chain. So by putting this solution in place, everyone's logging into the same portal. They're completing their SAQs in one place. So the individual franchise can manage their particular achievement of PCI compliance, but more importantly to the corporate brand, they can see who's taking it seriously and who isn't. It's very user-friendly, and it does things like help them fill out the self-assessment questionnaire. It's got a complete e-learning module. So when someone buys this solution, they immediately have a self-provisioning way to let every employee, from the people cooking up fries to the cashiers, log in at home, take their PCI awareness, and it produces evidence for both the individual franchise location and the corporate office on a roll-up level that all that training has occurred, which is an important and hard logistical thing to solve. So there's a lot of portals out there, but not many of them do this training as well as we do. So if you've got a training challenge with not having a fast, economical way to train all your people, that especially if you have a high turnover rate, which most small businesses do, we've got a great solution, and you should talk to us about that.
We just had one quick question come in saying, can your portal be branded?
We can do that. Some of our larger customers, so if you are a large corporate entity and you want to brand it, we can do that, and we've done that for some of our clients. So it's definitely an option, and great question.
Okay, great.
Just a couple more slides. The other kind of business we're in addition to helping people be PCI compliant, we have some real attractive bundles where we take our proprietary security technology, which we call Secure Cloud Gateway. We bundle it in with our PCI portal tool, so we'll give a small location really kind of a security and compliance in a box solution. We'll give them a managed firewall set up in an airtight policy configuration. We'll give them the best remote access there is out there in terms of making sure that someone is not logging in remotely that isn't supposed to be there or has an unsafe computer. So if someone tries to log into your location and they have a keystroke logger, let's say, on their PC that can basically intercept things that are being typed, we inspect for that, and we'll quarantine those types of situations. So again, we have kind of all these different security and compliance solutions. We have attractive bundles. They're priced very effectively for the level 4. So you can buy them all in one bundle, or we also offer some the ability to buy them individually. And then lastly, I talked about these qualified security assessors. So we have a bunch of folks back here in a couple different states, and we can do what I'm going to call professional services engagement. So we can go in, talk to us about a specific problem. We can do one-time gap analysis to figure out where your gaps are and what it's going to take, an effort analysis to plug those gaps. We can help you figure out a project plan to implement new technologies. So even if you're going to do it, but you want to make sure you do it right, that's something that we do for a lot of our larger clients is basically give them an implementation plan. We also do report on compliance. We help people write written security policies, things like that. And then we also have a great solution for scanning. So as many of you know, you have to do quarterly vulnerability scans. And in that portal that I was describing a slide back, that's all contained in that portal. So you can do your scan, schedule it. The results are presented to you in that portal. So if you're the corporate location and you want to engage and help a smaller location, you can go and see the results of their scan, as can they, and you can basically really get your arms around not only the SAQs, but the results of the required quarterly scans for anyone that has a point-of-sale system. So that is the end of the formal materials. Kim, do we have, and I thank everyone for joining us, do we have any other questions that have come in?
We do. We have one other one that came in, and that was, do most vendors offer the same technology for PCI?
That's a good question. So the answer is no. You really, there's a lot of different bundling of options. So, there's people that in general will give you a portal. In general will give you a firewall. There's a lot of people who will do your scans for you. But where the differentiation, you got to look at the features that you're getting, how it's bundled together, making sure that something that you really need, such as training, is included. Most vendors leave the training out, and they say, hey, you're on your own for that. So if you're the type of company looking to get kind of comprehensive support in helping your level 4s become PCI compliant, you really need a vendor, and you don't want to deal with lots of different vendors because that's difficult for a level 4 to deal with one vendor for scanning, another one to help with their SAQ, yet another to do their training. So you really need to look at vendors that can bundle the things that your level 4s need in order to be PCI compliant. So I can't speak for everyone, but my advice is ask lots of questions and do your homework and choose wisely because there are differences out there.
Okay, we had one other question come in that says, what do you recommend to businesses who receive credit card numbers via email for future orders?
That's a really good question. That is, you need to make sure those emails are not in the clear. That's really not a safe way to do things. Credit card, especially if it's showing the whole credit card, that's a total no-no. So there are in the PCI regulations some real solid stipulations about that. So I would, if you're doing e-commerce and you're relying on email, make sure that no credit card, especially the entire number, make doubly sure that's not that's occurring. But I would talk to a vendor to make sure that you're doing everything safe with email. There's a lot of phishing scams out there. There's a lot of email vulnerabilities in order to trick people into giving information that they shouldn't be. Through emails, routing you to one of the most common things is you get an email and it routes you to a site that looks like the site you're going to, but it really isn't, and it tricks you into typing in the credit card number. Email is a real big area of concern and that's hit really hard too in training. So in our awareness training classes and other ones out there, that's probably one of the number one kind of learning areas for employees. Being aware of these different email vulnerabilities that can compromise your data.
Very good. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
All right. Well, I thank everyone for joining, and on behalf of everyone here, wish everyone a happy holiday.
And with that, we're going to do a Best Buy giveaway.
Oh,
so happy holidays!
Excellent.
Yes. So we're going to go ahead and to put everyone's name in a bowl here and randomly pick someone out.
Drum roll here.
Yeah, there we go. The winner is Vicki Hodgkins. So Vicki will be winning the $50 gift card, and everyone here will be getting a $5 gift card for their participation today, and everyone else that answered questions.
All right. Well, congrats.
Yep. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to visit us or give us a call at anx.com, and we will be very happy that you joined us today.
Thanks. Happy holidays, everyone.